What's up, guys? Welcome back to Exit Velo, right here on Facebook on backsportspage.com. I'm Ryan Morick, alongside Adam Cohen. We got a good episode today. Good and kind of bad because the baseball world is just a big mess. We're going to talk about the 30 for 30 Long Gone Summer that broadcasted the other night. We'll talk about the Yankees and the new cheating scandal. But, Adam, we're going to start it off right now with Rob Manfred's comments yesterday to Mike Greenberg on ESPN. Basically, he went from 100% having a season to he's not certain at all in under 72 hours. And my first thought was baseball has lost. If they're losing diehard fans, like I said this to myself the other day, Adam, if I never watched, this is the fan in me because my job is literally baseball and that's how I make my living, but the fan in me will live without baseball. I've been doing okay without sports. I've been playing a lot of golf, and quite frankly, when all these sports except baseball comes back, basketball is going to be in the middle of a playoff race. Hockey is going to be in the middle of a playoff race. Football is king, and I'm going to be stuck with my 7 fantasy teams once football jumps around. I'm watching golf. Hell, I'll even watch NASCAR if I have to. And you know what? I've been fine watching old games. This is the guy who has a baseball tattoo on his arm, a guy who has worked in baseball, a guy who has written about baseball and been around the game for so long. The game was my first love. I'll live. Imagine the casual fan who watches their local baseball team not until the 6th inning because their TV show finally ended for the night. I really wonder if baseball is taking into account. I mean, Rob Manfred said that he used the word disaster, and I really don't think they quite get it. I just think that they really I've been vocal about both the owners and the players side, Adam, and while I still think that the players do have some sort of blame, that's my girlfriend Melissa. Everyone say hi. While the players deserve some sort of blame, the owners started it, and at this point, the owners finished it with the help of Rob Manfred.
Manfred's comments were an exclamation point on what he called a disaster, and it has been, and this whole debacle on these back-and-forth proposals that went absolutely nowhere after these past 2 months. It has been a disaster, and everyone knew that Manfred should not have said 100%. Like, you should never say really 100% about anything, especially in kind of this mess about baseball. And
right.
And just to add on to how bad it got, is that the MLB owners and Manfred asked the Players Association not to file a grievance against them throughout all this, which is ridiculous because you can actually still play through a grievance. And there's no way for the players to not file a grievance throughout all this because the owners really have not been acting in good faith. They really have been trying to limit the amount of games. This could even be a stalling tactic right now to try to limit it a couple more weeks and be closer to a 50 to 60 game season rather than to a 70, 80 game season. And it's terrible. You also mentioned the point.
Yeah,
about,
go ahead. No, sorry.
Yeah. No, all good. About diehard fans. For example, I've been playing baseball with my dad. I'm going to be broadcasting Northwoods League in a couple of 2 weeks, which will be fun. And it's funny how that's going to happen before baseball. So that's hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point.
We'll survive. The diehard fans will survive. The casual fans, though, the fans who, as you mentioned, watch the game after the 6th inning, the fans who are maybe trying to get into baseball a little bit more, the fans that care about their team to some extent, those ones are gone. A lot of them are just gone. They say no more baseball until 2023 even, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's sad.
It's funny how this is all coming at a time where, like I said, we'll talk about the Long Gone Summer documentary with Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa. But compare what's going on now to then. MLB was in a really tough spot after the strike. Their attendance was down up until 1998, basically. And even when the Yankees made the playoffs in 95, 96, 97. They made it for 3 straight years to post-strike. They were good in 94. They probably would have won the division that year. So even the New York Yankees, being a great baseball team, couldn't even get baseball over the hump. It took Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa to finally do so. But we look at today, and Adam, we're seeing home runs hit at no hyperbole here, record paces. I mean, 4 teams this year broke the Yankee record from 2018. And while it was the home run and the long ball to bring baseball back to what it used to be in terms of popularity and attendance, we are seeing dingers like we've never seen before. And there's no change in ratings. And if anything, for a change, it's going down. So is there anything that baseball can do to bring back the casual fan? I feel like old fans, guys like you and I, look, we can sit here all we want and rip apart the owners and the players and say that we'll be okay. The second baseball comes back, you and I are going to watch, obviously. Like, I'm not even going to try to kid around that or work my way around that. We're going to watch baseball. But again, the casual fan who doesn't like how it's home run or strikeout today, but that's why baseball came back. Baseball is losing so many people, and I feel like this is almost irreversible.
Well, I would like to say that I think Manfred, and I will relate this to your point, I think Manfred has not taken this initiative in the right way. When he came into power, he said he wanted to speed up the game, and I don't think that's the best way about going about this. And that's kind of what MLB has been focusing on, getting rid of little details and adding the replay system. Those aren't totally bad. It helps to not see a.
I've always said that Ron Manfred has the right mindset in terms of fixing the game, but he's just not going about it the right way. That's just my 2 cents.
That's fair. I mean, like, speeding the game to some extent is fine, but adding robot umpires or having Olympic rule in the extra inning, that doesn't help baseball too much. What helps baseball is having players mic'd up on the field, having more promotional events, maybe. Actually, and I think in other types of leagues, and I forget one of the leagues, one of the Asian leagues, they have these specialty events of trying to throw baseballs off wooden bats like 10 times in a row, or having fielding competitions. That would help baseball. Or they have to do something with the ball too, because everyone loves a good home run. Every baseball fan, even non-baseball fans, love good home runs. But when you have an oversaturation like this, they need to go back and try to find ways where they can still promote small ball, because I love stolen bases. I love hit and runs. I love bunts. I love good defensive gems. Those are all an integral part of the game. I love hit and runs. They're amazing. And whether it may be pushing out the fences or changing the ball again, they need to do something where home runs are not going out at a record pace, and just bring back fundamental baseball to some extent and have that nice balance between fundamental baseball and home runs and strikeouts.
The thing is, you and I like stolen bases and bunts and hit and runs because you and I like the science and the strategy of baseball, if there even is such a strategy. The question is, do the casual fans like that? And I don't really know. I mean, look, my football fandom isn't like my baseball fandom, but I can sit there and understand why a running back runs right into a brick wall of people. Is it fun? No, but it's just a part of the game. So I can't understand where the casual fan comes from in terms of the strategy of the game, because as even hockey, like, I'm not the world's biggest New Jersey Devils fans by any stretch of the imagination, but I understand dumping the puck into the neutral zone, and I understand not shooting every chance you get when you're on the power play. So I can't understand where the casual fan comes from in terms of that aspect, but for some reason in baseball, it's a thing. And baseball is just weird in general, and we'll talk about, again, we mentioned Long Gone Summer, we'll mention cheating, because you and I have talked about how steroids in baseball is the work of the devil, but Julian Edelman got suspended for steroids. Mark Ingram got suspended for steroids. Golden Tate got suspended for steroids. That's 3 football players right there. And I'll bet some of you watching right now are like, oh my God, yeah, like they got suspended for steroids. But going back to Rob Manfred, Trevor Bauer had an awesome thread. I'll try to read it verbatim, but it's basically he mentioned how Rob Manfred changed his word within the span of 3 days. And I think where he made a really good point is the fact that Trevor Bauer is kind of outing Rob Manfred, who, and the owners haven't kept it a secret at all, that they want to keep this under 60 games. We can go back and forth on the money aspect. I've said that I understand where the owners are coming from in some aspect, because losing money stinks, and I understand that. But Trevor Bauer made a really good point where he said that baseball can be played right now. The players, the phenomenon right now by players is tell us when and where. That's what Tony Clark said. That's what the baseball players are saying. Everyone is saying, tell us when and where. At this point, we don't care anymore. The players are literally taking the L here. They're saying, we surrender. They're waving the white flag, and they're not doing, the owners don't want to play right now. And Trevor Bauer made a really good point outing Rob Manfred in saying that they just want to keep it 55 games, even that they can play today. And I think that's a really bad job by the commissioner and the owners. The fact that they're basically saying, look, it's either this or nothing.
Oh, it's terrible for sure. It's amazing, because if the owners were to give any amount of prorated games right now, even it could even be as small as 48 games, the players would eat it up and play on the field. They would have their spring training. They'd be on the field right now. And people need to realize that Manfred's not for the players. He was brought along by the owners. He's their puppet. He's supposed to represent them, and he's going to reflect their values. So everything that he's doing, everything that he's stalling with right now by not having baseball start, there was supposed to be a hard deadline June 15th. That was yesterday. We didn't get anything done. He was supposed to basically lay down the law of the season, but now he's saying the players can't file a grievance, and now baseball's up in the air, and it is less than 100% now, and it's probably not even close to 75% by that logic. And I think they're just trying to... Yeah, go ahead.
It's a shame how every league is figuring it out. Golf, look at the PGA. Your livelihood is literally based on how good you are week by week. No golfers have a set salary. They make money based on where they finish in the tournament. Where are they getting all that money from right now? Look at freaking horse racing. Horse racing is literally the definition of money and generating revenue because of gambling and how much money the owners win based on where they finish. And I think that kind of goes for the same with NASCAR too. And I wonder if football is going to have this conversation too, because it's looking likely that they might not have fans at all this year. So I really wonder if they'll have this conversation. But my big issue here is the fact that you look at the NBA and you look at the NHL, and right now it's looking like they'll play. But the one thing that's holding them back is staying in quarantine for 3 months and the hotel workers. And now there's a thing going on with the Black Lives Matter movement. And those are legitimate reasons to worry for your safety and your family's health. Meanwhile, baseball, if they just said, look, we don't feel safe, we wouldn't care. You would have some people out there in the world who would think the whole thing's that's all political propaganda garbage. You have some of those people. If baseball just came out and said, look, we're not comfortable with this, we're not having this conversation. We're having this conversation because they made it so much about money, and that's the upsetting part.
Just to add on to that, it's hilarious how in their recent statement, they still haven't agreed to a health and safety proposal, which is hilarious because that's always been secondary. But when everyone saw that 67-page proposal, people had hope because it was so thorough and it required so much testing, and it really took it to the nth degree about keeping the players safe and everyone who works around baseball. But they still can't even agree on that, which is awful. And there's just like some few logistical changes, like maybe you have players shower and, I don't know, be 6 feet apart when they're in their shower stall.
Things that they can figure out.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong really with that proposal. They can't even agree on that logic. And then also the other day, somehow by the Associated Press, it turns out MLB players have the virus right now. So that came out in the perfect time. And I also heard a really good point online too, in that, well, those players just wouldn't show up to spring training or the season. Can still have the season because not every player in the country has the virus. It's just those select few, which is of course terrible, and they should be quarantined. And their status about the virus hasn't been shown, but it's not a mistake that happened at the same time that baseball wasn't going to be 100% this season.
Going back to the whole when and where thing and the players, this is Tony Clark's statement that was made sometime early last night. Quote, players are disgusted that after Rob Manfred unequivocally told players and fans that there would 100% be a 2020 season, he has decided to go back on his word and is now threatening to cancel the entire season. And the implication that the Players Association has somehow delayed progress on health and safety protocols is completely false. And Rob has recently acknowledged that the parties are very, very close. This latest threat is just one more indication that Major League Baseball has been negotiating in bad faith since the beginning. This has always been about extracting additional pay cuts from players, and this is just another day and another bad faith tactic in their ongoing campaign. So like we just said, Adam, health and safety protocols, it's things that they can figure out. There are minor kinks that they can work out. It's literally just the fact that it's all about money. Another thing that I've thought about, replacement players and minor leaguers. I don't think that the MLB would do that, but I really wonder. We've talked about the casual fan versus the diehard fan. I wonder if the diehard fan would even watch. I mean, granted, the KBO has been on ESPN. I haven't watched because I'm not up at 4:30 in the morning. Maybe if it were on in real time, I would watch. But at the same time, college baseball is on TV very easily accessibly. Granted, is it on the same time as I'm watching the Yankees play? Yes, and I'd rather watch the Yankees play over college baseball. But even if, even when college football is on Saturdays, I'm not moving out of my way to watch it. And I really wonder if college baseball were, even if the College World Series, I don't go out of my way to watch it, and it's on during the day. So it's probably because I don't know anybody, but that leads me to replacement players and minor leaguers playing for the big leagues. I really wonder, the casual fans certainly won't watch, and I really wonder if fans like you and I would.
See, I find it kind of difficult if that there'd be replacement players, or at least the whole league would just turn into, or would leave the superstars and just have the minor leaguers play. I can't really see that happening too much because I think the general consensus among the league is that players, even the stars, want to play, and those who want to sit out. And that's actually the one thing that owners and players have agreed on, is that players who are high risk can sit out. No harm, no foul. They get their salary, they get their service time. But in that theoretical situation that a lot of stars would want to sit out and replacement players play, I wouldn't watch that. I think that's ridiculous because Yankees just got Garrett Cole. I want to see him pitch. Yankees have Aaron Judge and Stanton, and I don't want to see some random guy from the minor leaguers come up yet. And granted, minor leaguers are very professional baseball players too, but it just wouldn't be at the same level. I love the KBO. I think it's awesome. But comparatively, they're like AA baseball compared to Major League Baseball. It's just not the same thing.
I would like to think that the baseball fan in me was like, oh my God, I'd watch it. Are you kidding me? I want to know about the Yankees farm system, and I want to see what kind of up-and-coming rookies there are in baseball, because I think that baseball needs to do a better job of promoting their own players and promoting their draft. I mean, the MLB draft was 5 rounds. People don't watch the MLB draft because it's 40-something rounds. You finally had a 5-round draft, and I didn't know one person. Granted, there are some people out there who study these high schoolers like it's their job. I don't care because they're not going to be in the league for 5 years.
Exactly. I'll hear about them.
I pay attention to you once you're proven that you're a top 4 prospect, at least in AA. That's just me. I don't know about you. I know that you guys, I think you guys had previously talked about the MLB draft at some point, at least in our group chat or whatever. But at the end of the day, I don't see myself cutting off all plans to watch AA players play. I just don't.
I love the draft, and it seems interesting because it's always been a big thing for me to like try to get more into that because it's the one area of professional baseball that I don't know as much as Yankees or just general updates around the league updates.
And watching players get drafted is just cool anyway.
Of course. Of course. And it would have been fun to cover that at times past a bit, but you're right. At the same time, they won't come up for 5 years. Baseball also has a ton of players that are being drafted, unlike basketball or football, so it's different in that regard too, and they're not going to be impact players right away. And you're right, when I hear them on the top 30 prospect list, I'm like, oh, then I'll remember them. But besides that, I don't really care too much unless it's really the top guys, such as Torkelson, who hits balls off of buildings. That's pretty cool, and I'll pay attention to players such as him. But besides that, not too much.
Blaze Jordan, the guy that the Red Sox took. I didn't hear of him until I saw it on Twitter. And this guy's hitting moonshots. Like, the dude was hitting balls off the scoreboard in Cleveland.
At age 13.
It's not even just in minor leaguers in high school. They can't do this at the professional level. I mean, Mike Trout is the best player on the planet. Granted, playing in the West Coast hurts him a little bit. And I'd say that the most popular player in the big leagues is probably Aaron Judge. And look, the guy's 6'7", he's 280 pounds. He plays in New York. He had an unbelievable rookie season. He just has a look to him, and that's probably why he's the most popular player in the big leagues. But I want to see baseball just do a better job at marketing its players. And they can't do that when they're literally threatening to cancel the season, which brings me to my point. How many owners out there really don't want to play? I think it's a lot more than we think. I know that people have said somewhere between 4 to 8 owners. I think a lot of owners would rather just not play this year because we have seen sources go out there and say that they're going to cut a lot of payroll next year. The New York Mets, it's already a rumor. The New York Mets, who already have very questionable owners in terms of putting money back into the team, especially when they've gotten insurance money from David Wright and Yoenis Cespedes. All of that money, they haven't put it back into the team. Jed Lowry, that's another issue. But there are just a ton of owners out there, in my opinion, who really don't want to play. If that's your case, sell your team. You got Steve Cohen, you got A-Rod, you got Josh Harris, all who are interested in the Mets. Imagine guys who are interested for the Kansas City Royals or the Cleveland Indians. And at this point, the Mets were going to sell for $2.5 billion along with SNY, who makes a crap load of money. Think about if that's what that value is at. Think about the value of the Royals and the Marlins and all those teams where people would be lining up to pay for them.
There are certainly a lot of low budget owners who don't want to play right now because, well, they'll lose money, such as the Marlins. But even if you're a low budget owner, they signed Stanton to the highest extension of all time. And they can sign big players if they want to. They can be competitive if they choose they want to go that route. You could also look at the big time owners who are like saying, I don't want my team to be in a 16-game playoff and be eliminated in the first round. Now, I would hate, for example, the Yankees to be eliminated in the first round, but it's still baseball. You still get to play. And you're right. What are you doing as an owner if you're not putting your team on the field and to have baseball content out there and to show off your team to your fans and to get revenue and to can build franchises? So there's really no excuse from big-time owners, from low-budget owners. There's no excuse for them to say, we don't want a season, because they'll end up making that money back in a year or two anyway. They can hold on to pretty much any of their employees since they're billionaires.
Yep.
And financially, they can all afford big-time players and they can handle these tough deficits.
And the thing is, I mean, what's tough about this whole thing is I understand where owners are coming from. You've heard me say this a million times and I've been vocal about it. In terms of the real world, owners will be okay. But the thing is, owners don't live in the real world. Their job is to put a good product on the field. You look at the Expos, who had a $19 million payroll in 94, by far the lowest in baseball. Then they had to lose Larry Walker to free agency, probably would have left anyway. But then they were forced to trade their next three highest paid guys. And then they went from 19 million to 12 million, all because of the strike. Their already low payroll was almost cut in half. So these owners have a job to do, and their job is to put a product on the field. And I understand that. This pandemic is definitely going to hurt owners in their pockets, and guys like Mookie Betts and a lot of free agents next year are probably not going to be making as much money as they originally thought. And there are going to be teams out there who have to cut payroll, which more than likely leads to a lesser product on the baseball field. I understand that. But in terms of owning a team, there is risk. Not everything can be positive. You already own a team, and a lot of teams already suck. No offense, but if you have 48 wins, then is this pandemic really hurting you? It's not like the Detroit Tigers, who won 48 games last year, are going to be in the market for Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts is not going to want to play for a team that loses 110 games a year. The Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Angels, those are the teams that are going to be interested in Mookie Betts. And I think that's a problem in baseball. And we're going to have a podcast on this. I think that this should be a salary cap. But that's just me. I think it works in other sports. Not even the friggin' point. The point is, that's where I do feel for owners. But if you really just can't handle it, why are you in the business in the first place? That's coming from someone who will literally never see the money or be an owner of a team at all. But to me, that's just common sense. You can't just own a team in sports and expect everything to be rainbows. And I'm sure that there are some owners out there who just do it to make a profit. And there are just some owners out there who really don't care that much about winning. But why are you in it?
Well, the players are obviously not totally at fault here. There is some jurisdiction, as you mentioned, of why the owners have some backing for not wanting a season, because they're losing a lot of money, and that's not a sound business plan wherever you go. And I think you are right in how a lot of these low market teams will probably be hindered the most. And the big market teams might capitalize really on free agents next year, because Mookie Betts, well, he's not going to sign for $30 million next year. So next year, we'll probably get a 1-year deal of $10 million to a.
We could very well see the Bryce Harper, Manny Machado off season.
Exactly. It'll be interesting. Big teams are just going to capitalize more on this, and they probably don't want the players to have any incentive for boosting their free agency stock too. That's one thing that hasn't been talked about right now. And Yankees, who are already have a lot of financial commitments, well, they lose LeMahieu, they lose Gardy, they lose Paxton. They don't have to re-sign all of their guys. You can try to re-sign cheaper options or get them at a cheaper deal, even if they want to keep them. So there's definitely a reason for the owners to not want a season. Now, it's certainly not in good faith, because if you are an owner, you should try to put a product in the field, even if it's not the best product that you can at the time being, and you should try to do it for the fans. And the fans need this right now with all the racial injustice going on with the pandemic. They want baseball. They need baseball. And to just make it all about the money, as we've mentioned, is outright terrible.
Before we move on to the documentary talk, I just want to say one thing. Everyone feels bad for the owners. Try to think about the front office employees and the sports writers out there who literally need sports to function in life. I mean, you and I, we're baseball fans first, and there are a ton of fans out there who just want everyone to shut up and start playing baseball. But I see a lot of my LinkedIn connections out there who are losing jobs, and a lot of my former colleagues out there who are losing jobs because they have no tickets to sell, and a lot of ticket sales reps out there who a lot of their income is from commission, but they are making $0 in commission, and they haven't been making any commission for the last few months. So you can say that you want sports back, but there are a lot of people out there who aren't players, who will never see the league minimum salary, who make the medium income in the United States. Those are the guys who need sports back in order to so they can just put food on the table for themselves and their families. So just take that into account. I don't even know how to segue into this, but I want to talk about the 30 for 30, and I want that to lead into the New York Yankees discussion. They are kind of somewhat, I don't even know, they're rumored to be in the middle of their own sign stealing scheme from a few years ago, but the long gone summer, the 30 for 30 on ESPN the other night about the home run chase, very, very good. I know you haven't watched it, but you and I were talking about it beforehand, before we got on here, Adam. Kind of annoying how they didn't really talk about how Major League Baseball was condoning steroids, and it didn't really become that big of a deal until the Balco scandal in 2003 with Barry Bonds and Rafael Palmeiro and McGuire and Sosa, so on and so forth. But and we talked about how a home run chase might not even help baseball today, but boy, in 1998, it helped a lot, and it brought baseball back on the map. And watching how awesome it was to see McGuire and Sosa go back and forth. I mean, there was at one point in mid-September where Sammy Sosa actually had 65 home runs and McGuire had 66. No, vice versa. Sosa had 66, McGuire had 55. It turned out that was actually Sosa's last home run of the season, but watching the back and forth of that, and we can get into the steroid conversation, and we will, but nonetheless, pretty damn cool.
Say what you want about steroids, but you're right. That home run chase saved baseball. It wasn't really the Yankees from 95 to 98, although that certainly helped. It was that home run chase, that monumental record, that long gone summer that just dragged on forever and was just every day everyone was looking at McGuire and Sosa. I mean, even in Fenway Park, they had McGuire and Sosa's home run totals back to back so people can keep pace. It was a phenomenal record. And people also forget that Griffey was part of the chase as well. Another huge, huge player for the Mariners, who had almost lost their city or almost lost their team. So it's an amazing home run movie or home run skit, but it didn't really focus too much on steroids, didn't focus too much on really the interviews with McGuire and Sosa, didn't focus too much on the repercussions. I heard it happen in the last 15 minutes, but
yeah,
if you're someone like you and me who didn't really see the 1998 home run chase, well, it's cool to see this giant home run highlight reel, which if you like that, you're going to enjoy the 30 for 30. If you want to see them talk about steroids, then 30 for 30 isn't for you.
Yeah, I would have liked it to be a little bit more investigative for sure. They really mentioned it at the end, but that was the disappointment. I'm going to be honest with you, Adam. Before I watched the 30 for 30, I was one of those guys who said only Bonds and Clemens, because those guys just totally outperformed everyone. You know what? I think at this point, look, I'm going to, if there's anyone on any future ballot, and we'll see Alex Rodriguez in a couple of years, I feel like it's okay to vote these guys into the Hall of Fame. And I think that if you look at someone who took PEDs, you should probably give them a higher threshold, and rightfully so. But even with that, you look at Mark McGuire, he didn't even play 2,000 games, and he almost hit 600 home runs. I was looking at some numbers. If he played as many games as Barry Bonds, at his home run pace, he would have hit over 900 home runs. So McGuire's power was unbelievable. And he hit 49 home runs in his rookie year when he looked like Darryl Strawberry. The guy was like 6'5", 190. The guy was a stick, and his power had always been there. Hell, that was a record that stood up until Aaron Judge broke it, and he played at Yankee Stadium. So I'm sure that a couple of those home runs were cheapies. And even Pete Alonso, who had the juice ball. So one could argue that McGuire's pre-steroid days might even still be a legitimate record. I think, though, I've always said this. If you disagree that steroid users should not be if you think that steroid users should not be in the Hall of Fame, I'm not going to argue with you because it is cheating. But my side of it is, you look at guys like Chuck Knobloch, who didn't even hit 100 home runs and couldn't even throw a ball from second base. You look at, I forgot some of the names that I put
Andy
out there.
Pettit.
What's that?
Andy Pettit.
Andy Pettit, who, yeah, that's kind of a different...
He's a borderline Hall of Famer to begin with, but the steroids don't really help him at all.
Right, and that's also kind of a weird situation because he claims that he only used it twice to heal an injury. But guys who, Francisco Cervelli and Jesus Montero played 200 pro baseball games. So I'm not condoning PED use by any stretch of the imagination, but these guys still had insane talent. And I'll make my point after this, but I'd love to hear your response to that because I have another point that I want to make also, but I don't want to ramble on too much.
I think one of the best points you made was that people who take PEDs need to be held to a higher standard. So right before the show, I went to, all right, where does McGwire rank among Hall of Famers or Hall of Fame first basemen? Well, he's right ahead of Joey Votto right now and right behind Willie McCovey in terms of WAR. Then you have right fielders such as Sammy Sosa, and he's in a similar range too. He's like top 18 or so in terms of JAWS, which is a Hall of Fame stat. Let's see. So yeah, he's up there as well. He's right ahead of Dave Winfield, and he's very close to Ichiro, and he's ahead of other guys, other steroid users such as.
He's ahead of Ichiro?
Well, he's a few behind Ichiro. Like he's very close to him.
And Ichiro might go unanimous.
Exactly. So not everyone who takes steroids, of course, is a Hall of Famer, but the elite ones, such as Sosa and McGwire, and even guys who are in the Hall of Fame now, such as Bagwell and Pudge, who've had their own PED scandals, not as to the extent as Bonds at Clemens, but they still had these scandals wrapped around them. You even look at a current player such as Robinson Cano. He is probably the best second baseman of the 2000s, without a doubt. You could argue maybe Kent's up there, but he wasn't a good fielder, and he was just a home run hitter. Cano was the whole package. You're telling me that Cano's not a Hall of Famer just because he took PEDs in his age 37 season, which knocked him out 80 games? Obviously, that's terrible, but he's still a Hall of Famer in my book. He's still an amazing second baseman.
Tell me if this makes sense or not. We are seeing home runs in baseball rise, and with that, we're also seeing strikeouts rise. I like to use this example because I live it. Like I play golf a lot. Mm-hmm. If I swung as hard as I possibly can, I could hit a golf ball with my driver at least 330 yards. It would happen once every 100 swings, but I can do it. So with that being said, knowing that you can hit these, look at Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, and Joey Gallo, who are striking out at insane paces and hitting home runs at insane paces too. They can hit the ball 500 feet, so they chase more. So with that being said, and I could be totally wrong on this, but guys like Bonds and McGwire and Sosa, knowing that they can hit the ball as hard as they possibly could, and Barry Bonds also had insane plate discipline. His plate discipline might be the best ever. So he's like another animal of itself. But guys like Sosa and McGwire, who never really hit for average. I think McGwire hit 260 and Sosa was around 270 or so. Bonds, different story. He was a 300 hitter with a million on-base percentage. So these guys who know that they can hit bombs, I think that their chase rate might be a little bit higher. So I don't want to say it totally cancels out, but I also think that knowing that you can hit balls that far and drive in 3 runs with one swing almost at will might lead you to swing at those sliders in the dirt and pull your front shoulder out a little bit and strike out more. So I'm not saying that steroids make you worse, because if it made you worse, no one would be taking them. And that's the same for the sign stealing or whatever. But I almost feel like it kind of does cancel out. If you have an argument against that, I'd love to hear it. But knowing how much I play golf and knowing how I can hit a ball very far and I don't usually, I just feel like that's a good comparison that exists.
Well, even with these big home run hitters, you could argue, yes, they're trying to hit a home run every time. But I think most hitters' approach, just playing baseball for a decent amount of time, is just to hit the ball hard and,
But not guys like Joey Gallo. You'll never see him bunt against the shift. He said, and Mark Teixeira has said it, like they get paid to hit home runs. They don't want to get a single.
Well, not like bunts, but I'm saying like their approach, and I think most hitters' approaches are, let me square this ball up and hit it as hard as I can.
Right. Gotcha.
But big guys such as Judge and Stanton and Gallo, they can do that at a higher rate because, well, they have insane exit velo and they're freaks of nature. You got to look at the home run rate from these other players' point of view, such as Scooter Gennett. He should not have been a 25 home run hitter. Yonder Alonso, who had never hit like 12 home runs or more, had like a 20-plus homer season. Or guys such as Carlos Santana having this comeback season and being part of their first All-Star game in forever.
Yep.
That's not something that is normal or should be happening. As much as I love those guys and I'm happy that they're having these career rejuvenations, this is the effect of these juice balls because anyone can be a home run hitter. 20 home runs is chump change now.
Yeah.
Even 30 home runs. 52 players had 30 home runs last year.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That should not happen at any level. And I do agree to your point of how McGuire and Bonds and Sosa, they were more than just home run players. They had great plate discipline. Sosa had speed. So did Bonds. They were more than just home run or bust. And I do miss that part of the game. You can be a home run hitter without striking out on your face than 30% of the time.
Yeah.
But you also have to give a lot of credit to these pitchers because pitchers didn't throw as hard. They didn't. I don't think their pitches moved as much too because we're seeing these insane amounts of spin rate. So the pitching's gone up, and I think players striking out at least a 20% a clip is normal. I think Judge and Stanton and Gallo will always strike a bit higher, but even for them, 30% is just ridiculous. So
yeah,
the home run races ruin baseball to an extent for everyone. It's definitely at least changed the game in that regard, but I think it's really more affected your kind of average hitter.
Well, yeah, because of, what is it, like 2/3 of at bats or plate appearances, I should say, is a strikeout, a walk, or a home run. So baseball has become predictable, and that goes back to what we were talking about before, like what can baseball do? And the casual fan hates bunts, but we do. So that's where baseball is in a tough spot. But going back to PEDs, it's funny how guys like Trevor Bauer tweeted the other day, Barry Bonds is a Hall of Famer. And it's so funny to see how many players out there just don't care about steroids. And what they talked about in the documentary is if you didn't take performance-enhancing drugs in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you weren't doing everything that you could to help your team win. Nowadays, it's more so of an individual decision. But back then, they threw them out like candy. And if you weren't taking this stuff, you weren't helping your team. And I'm sure that that's some people's mindset today, but I think nowadays it's more so of an individual decision. But going back to the original point, you look at Trevor Bauer, for instance, who has always said that Barry Bonds is a Hall of Famer, and I'm sure that he probably thinks that Roger Clemens and A-Rod and Sosa and McGuire and all these guys and Rafael Palmeiro are all Hall of Famers. And you look at how adamant that he is, and a lot of the league has been about sign stealing. Yes, cheating is cheating. But we talked about this when the Astro scandal first came out, Adam. There's levels to this. There is definitely a level of egregiousness in terms of cheating. If you gave me the choice of taking steroids versus knowing what's coming, I'm taking knowing what's coming 1,000 times out of 1,000, and I think I speak for a lot of people out there, and I think that's not really my opinion because we've seen the voices in terms of steroids versus sign stealing. And what's funny is these voters also, I see a lot of people who say, well, steroid users are already in the Hall of Fame, so why stop now? We also take a look at Mike Piazza and Pudge Rodriguez, who are in the Hall of Fame, who've had their fair share of rumors. If it comes out that they did wind up cheating, voters didn't vote knowing that. So I understand the voters' process in voting for a guy like Pudge or Piazza, but not Barry Bonds and Clemens, because they voted not realizing that. I know I just went on off of a tangent there, but I just wanted to get those points across.
I think one of Bauer's best quotes from that Twitter thread was, this wouldn't be a Hall of Fame if they condone cheating. It would be the Hall of the Very Empty. Because Babe Ruth injected, I think it was like goat testosterone, or it was something like testosterone from an animal into his arm. It was some weird crap. Very 1920s weird crap. And then you have like Willie Mays, who took greenies. Like, everyone says that Mays is at least a top 5 player. He's pretty much in everyone's discussion that he's up there. And to many, he's even the best player of all time. Yeah. So there's always been cheating. Players will always have a leg up on competition. And you're right, there are levels. Because I think for a lot of people growing up, they stopped playing baseball when the ball started moving, when they started facing curveballs and changeups and sliders, and they couldn't hit that anymore. But if you told them throughout their childhood, hey, they're throwing a curveball right now, so wait on that. Well, their careers might have gone a little longer, maybe not to professional level, but it would have been a game changer for them.
Yeah.
So it still takes a lot of effort to square up a baseball. McGwire and Sosa, they probably would not have hit 66 and 70 home runs respectively. But hey, they've shown multiple times in their career they can hit 50 without the use of steroids or PEDs. So they're able to be monsters on the field. As for sign stealing, it's a bit different, but I can understand the Astros and Red Sox to some extent because this is very new. And I think one of the reasons why the players weren't banned is because a lot of teams are probably doing something similar. Yeah. And these big organizations like the Astros, the Red Sox, and Yankees, well, they're hallmarks for baseball. So if they get conducted or they get condoned, perhaps the rest of the league will say, oh, this was really bad on us, so we don't want to do that. They're kind of the examples here, and that's probably part of it.
Yeah, well, let's get into it. We brought up the sign stealing. The New York Yankees are now having their own fair share. And the thing with the Yankees is that they've kind of always had a smell to this whole thing over the last few months or so. I don't really know the exact details of it, but basically there was a lawsuit involving DraftKings and the Astros and the Red Sox. A bunch of guys who lost money in DraftKings. I guess they sued the league or something like that. They want some of their money back or whatever. And apparently in the court documents, there was something about the Yankees potentially stealing signs. Andy Martino of SNY has pretty much just said that it's nothing more than it's probably even less so than what happened with the Boston Red Sox. And we all know what happened with the dugout phone. Nothing more than Larry Rothschild asking if a pitch was a strike or not, which the Yankees got fined for, slap on the wrist, and that was that. Joe Rivera, on the other hand, one of my friends who I actually meant to text him when he was tweeting out his thread about his sources and the Yankees. I wanted to text him, like, I don't know whether to be like, congratulations on your scoop, or if I want to punch him in the face. But Joe was saying that he had sources that told him that the Yankees had cameras in 2017 that was fixated on the catcher's mitts, and then it wouldn't, and then if there was a guy on second, that they would relay the signs to the hitter. First thing I'm going to say, you and I are both Yankee fans. The first thing I'm going to say is, if this turns out that the Yankees were in fact stealing signs in 2017 and prior, I'm not going to be an idiot and brag about it. I think that, and I'm not, and same thing goes for steroids. I mean, were the 2009 Yankees on steroids? Some of them were. But you know what? as we've said, steroids and sign stealing is not the same. And Mark McGuire said in the documentary, he was like, look, I was not the only person taking steroids on my team. And I think when he said that, he was insinuating that there were a bunch of players in that locker room on some stuff. And I'm not going to sit here and say that this Philly and that Philly in 2009 were on steroids, because that wouldn't be right of me to just assume something. But you know what is right to assume? That there are guys in every clubhouse on something. Whatever the case may be. I'm not going to brag about my favorite team stealing signs, because I think that is total Bush League, and I think baseball needs to do something about that. But what Joe Rivera also said, if the league did an investigation on all of its players, half the players would have to be suspended. And that hurts the sport. I don't know what the answer is. I think that they need to bulk up on security. And we said this a while back too, that we had a feeling that it was going on in a lot more clubhouses. And Joe Rivera said the Royals and the Rangers were doing it too. I think baseball just wants to push this aside and just get it over with, because it is a big black mark for the sport. But nonetheless, if the Yankees are guilty of anything, I've said it with the Astros, I said it with the Red Sox, I'll say it with the Yankees, I'll say it with any team involved. There needs to be a punishment. Baseball has to stop just sweeping this under the rug. You need to send a message. And I said this to some of my friends. If you know the signs, why would you only relay them when you're on second base? Look at the Astros. They came up with a system to do it for every single at-bat. Smart isn't the right word to use, but they took advantage of a situation. And you know what? It paid off for them. Same thing with the Red Sox. Sign stealing has always been a part of the game. There's a boundary line, in my opinion. But I think baseball needs to do something in terms of boosting up security in clubhouses, suspending players. They need to do something. They have to.
I totally agree with you in the sense that any team, Yankees, Red Sox, Royals, Rangers, Astros, should be totally condemned for this Bush Elite type of move. And I think a lot of people who are reading into the Yankee sign stealing scandal, I think they're saying, like, look, they're having all these things redacted, and they're only going to show a portion of it to the public because it'll harm the player's reputation. And that looks fishy. No lie about that. It might be a slap on the wrist, but it's probably a whole bigger deal. And even who is it? Alex Cora, when he was on the Astros, said, hey, this was a much bigger deal. MLB was only scratching the surface of it when he was trying to defend himself recently. So it's definitely not a good look. However, I will say that I think because it happened a couple years ago, and I think MLB only gave a slap in the wrist, and they later absolved the Yankees of any crimes, because we looked into it, and a lot of clubs were doing a similar thing of using the replay phones to decode signs. So they absolved the Yankees, and I think they don't want to harm the players that were involved with it. So there is some jurisdiction as to why some of it's redacted. It's still fishy. I'm still sure that most of the general public, most of the people who were screwed over by DraftKings want to look into it. And I think the lawsuit itself is just very weird, because you have no idea how big it is and how many teams are using it. And you're trying to put a dollar amount onto how much you should be owed, or be petty that you lost your fantasy league and lost money. So I think the lawsuit's kind of a little weird to begin with. It's understandable to an extent, but it kind of seems it's a bit petty.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I hope comes out of this is, as much as I don't want it to be true at all, like I said before, the Yankees have always had a bad smell around them since this whole thing started. I hope that that MLB found nothing wrong with 2017, because how bad would they look? How bad would Aaron Judge and CC Sabathia and Masahiro Tanaka and Aroldis Chapman look? Because they were I listened to CC and Ryan Ruggles podcast all the time, CC went berserk. And CC talked about it on The Shop with LeBron and Will Smith on HBO. And Aaron Judge who's a quiet guy. He's like Derek Jeter, where he doesn't say anything. He was adamant about it, and he had no problem talking about that Twitter post and that Instagram post that he deleted, or all this Chapman, who should really watch his mouth because he served the suspension of his own in terms of a domestic violence dispute. He was adamant about it. Masahiro Tanaka, like I said, was adamant about it. These guys would look really dumb if they found out. And again, relaying signs on second base is not as egregious as banging on a trash can for every single at bat. I get that. But to play victim, and again, like I said, with steroids and cheating, there's levels to it. But to act like you did nothing wrong, and then hopefully it doesn't turn out like this. But if it does turn out that you were stealing signs in all of 2017, that's a very, very bad look if it turns out like that.
It would certainly be terrible for the Yankees. And honestly, I hold the Yankees to such a high degree because I want to believe that CC and Judge and Tanaka and Torres, they're all genuine people, especially CC, because he's not afraid to be honest. I mean, this guy, throw behind hitters to protect his catcher. Remember that game against the Rays with Roman? He's a team player. Yep. He is awesome. He's been outspoken more than ever on especially racial injustice, especially on sign stealing. So he's a big talker, and it's a good thing because Yankees need more opinionated people like that. And even Judge, who, as I mentioned, was quiet, he took down that post about Altuve winning the 2017 MVP, which was a amazing MVP race, and everyone was kind of annoyed that Judge didn't win it, but everyone loved that a 5-6 player like Altuve won it because
cool.
that never happened. Yeah.
Back then, I was glad that if Judge lost, it was to Altuve.
Exactly.
I think he has like a cool story. He was cut because he was too short. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you make a really good point there. We'll find out about the Yankees over the next few days. It looks like we've been on here for an hour. I think we're running out of words to say, but as much as we hate what's going on, I think we it stinks to talk about, but it is a story, and we don't want to talk about it. But that's the way baseball is rolling. Hopefully, this week we get some. We haven't had good news in baseball in a long time. Let's hope for sometime this week. But until then, it is not goodbye. To see you later. For Adam Cohen, I'm Ryan Moore saying so long and take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.